Howdy. My name is Nonat, and she kind of looks like she's gonna eat me. That's terrifying. And welcome to my deep dive into the Barbarian class of Pathfinder 2e. If you're new to the deep dive videos, we go over everything about these classes. From level 1 to 20, we go over all the class features, proficiencies, feats, and everything available to them in the core rulebook and the advanced player's guide. So strap in, these videos usually push really long, and it's gonna be a good one, because I love Barbarians in 2e. Let's get into it! Starting off, Barbarians have the single highest hit points in the game at 12 per level. If you combine this with an ancestry like an orc, or a dwarf, or a goblin with the unbreakable heritage, you're getting 22 base hit points, not counting constitution. You can start with 25 hit points as a barbarian, because unfortunately there's no way to get 18 constitution unless you're using the voluntary flaw system. Their key ability score is strength, obviously, and they are expert in everything except for reflex saves. So expert in perception, fortitude, and will, and trained in reflex saves. Now, they're not exactly skill junkies. They get athletics and 3 plus their intelligence and skills. They are trained in all weapons except advanced weapons, and trained in all armor except for heavy armor. That's it for their proficiencies, so let's move on to what makes a barbarian a barbarian. They get the Rage ability, and honestly what I'm about to explain here is just the base of how Rage works. Everything about the barbarian sort of expands on the Rage action, so no matter what barbarian you make, your Rage will not act exactly like I explain it here. Depending on something you pick later on down the line, it will alter your Rage ability, so keep that in mind. But on its own, Rage is a single action that makes you just fly into a crazy furious rage. You gain temporary hit points equal to your level plus your constitution modifier, so even at level 1, you can be getting like 4 temporary hit points here. The frenzy lasts for either 1 minute, until there are no enemies left that you know about, or until you fall unconscious, whichever of those comes first, and you cannot stop of your own free will. While raging, you deal 2 bonus damage with all weapons and unarmed attacks, except for agile weapons and unarmed attacks, which, unless you have certain stances or things that augment them, all unarmed attacks are agile. So, if you attack unarmed while raging, you only deal 1 extra damage. You also take -1 to your armor class, and you cannot use any actions with the Concentrate trait, because, you know, you're raging. When you finish raging, you lose all the temporary hit points, and you cannot rage again for 1 full minute. Now, the Instinct is the Barbarian subclass. We'll be going over that in just a minute, but effectively, depending on the instinct you pick, it will alter your rage in some way, and as you level up, give you a variety of different features. This is what really lets you customize your barbarian. After giving it some thought, half of the class features don't really make a lot of sense if you don't know what the instincts are and do. So let's go ahead and jump right into them. We'll do the instincts first, and then we'll look into the class features. So, depending on which instinct you pick, you will get a multitude of bonuses, as well as a unique anathema. An anathema is sort of a code, similar to something like a paladin, and even as a barbarian, if you break your anathema, or you commit your anathema, then you will lose the powers from your instinct, and thus, something like your rage ability will revert to its base state like we read before. So first off, the animal instinct barbarian is just completely in touch with the wild side of nature, and takes on the aspects of beasts while raging. You select an animal from this table, and depending on the animal you pick, whenever you take the rage action, you actually shapeshift part of your body to represent the animal you drive your instinct from. For example, if you draw your instinct from bulls, then when you rage, you will grow bull horns and gain a 1d10 unarmed horn attack with the shove and unarmed traits. That applies to all of these here. You have all of these to pick from. Additionally, you can pick from something not in this list and simply apply the correct one. For example, if you wanted to pick jaguar, you could still use the cat instinct table. If you are an animal instinct barbarian, you cannot disrespect your chosen animal in any way. So if you pick jaguar and you kidnap a jaguar to sell it off to poachers to make a quick coin, you will lose your powers. On top of that, you are not allowed to use any weapons while raging. So if for any reason you pick up a greatsword while raging and swing that, you lose your powers. The only way to get them back is to do an atonement ritual, which is its own whole thing. Animal Instinct Barbarians get Bestial Rage. Bestial Rage is just them explaining how when you rage, you shapeshift a little bit into your animal and gain the appropriate unarmed strikes. Your rage action also gets the Morph, Primal, and Transmutation traits. The specialization ability is not something you begin with. When you gain the Weapon Specialization class feature, you will gain the listed benefit from the specialization ability. When you gain the class feature, you increase the damage die size for the unarmed attacks granted by your chosen animal by 1 step. For example, the bullhorns, instead of dealing 1d10, will deal 1d12. Rage's bonus damage increases from 2 up to 5 when using your animal's unarmed strikes. And if you happen to be a frog or deer Animal Instinct, they gain reach up to 10 feet. When you gain the Greater Weapon Specialization class feature at, I believe, level 17, I could be wrong, you increase your damage again from plus 5 bonus damage to plus 12 bonus damage. And finally, at a certain level, you gain the class feature of Raging Resistance, and each instinct gets slightly different versions of that feature. Animal Instinct gain resistance to piercing and slashing damage. Again, this will make a little more sense when we go over it in the class features. Just know that for Animal Instinct, it applies to piercing and slashing damage. Dragon Instinct Barbarians draw their power from dragons. Surprise, surprise. Now, this does not mean that you are necessarily revering dragons. In fact, it says you can revere them, they can be in your bloodline, you can hate them so much that you become like them to stop them, fight fire with fire. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do with this instinct. When you pick the instinct at first level, you also pick a color of dragon from table 3-4. Each one gives you a different breath weapon as well as the area of effect that breath weapon has. The anathema of a Dragon Instinct Barbarian is to let a personal insult slide. If you let someone make fun of or insult you in any way, and you don't reprimand them or get an apology of some way, you lose your powers. The second half of the anathema depends on if your character reveres or hates dragons. If you hate dragons, failing to defeat them is an anathema. And if you love dragons, if you fail to respect them, it is anathema. While raging, a Draconic Barbarian increases their damage from +2 to +4, and that damage type changes to your dragon's breath weapon damage type. So, if you have a fire breath weapon from your Dragon Instinct, then instead of the +2 damage from rage, which would normally be the same damage type as your weapon, you now deal an additional 4 fire damage. Because of this, your rage action gains the arcane and evocation traits, as well as the trait matching the damage type of fire, electric, acid. When you gain weapon specialization, your draconic rage damage increases from 4 to 8, and when you get greater weapon specialization, it increases from 8 to 16. When you gain raging resistance, you resist piercing damage and the damage type of your dragon's breath weapon. The Fury Instinct, as you can see by the short text boxes, is just a really angry barbarian. They don't gain it from other beings or respect or hate or anything like that. It is a purely personal fury within them. They do not have an anathema at all, and instead they get to take an additional first level barbarian feat. Now this is in place of an instinct ability because unfortunately, Fury Instinct Barbarians don't alter their rage at all. Rage stays as it is, +2 to damage, -1 AC, no concentrate actions. When you gain weapon specialization, you increase the damage from +2 to +6, and when you gain greater weapon specialization, it increases from 6 to 12. Personally, where the Fury Instinct really shines is their raging resistance. You resist all physical weapon damage. You don't resist all physical damage. Unarmed strikes still deal full damage, but you resist all physical weapon damage against you, which is incredibly powerful. The Giant Instinct is similar to the Dragon Instinct. You can either revere giants, hate giants, or just want to be like a giant. The anathema of the Giant Instinct is to fail to face a personal challenge of strength. Whether you succeed or fail the challenge is not important, but if you refuse to go after it, it is anathema. Titan Mauler. Even if you are a small or medium creature, you can use weapons built for large creatures. If you're somehow not small or medium, and you're somehow a large creature, you can use a huge weapon. You gain access to one weapon, one size larger than you, of any weapon type otherwise available at character creations. It has the normal price and bulk for a weapon of its size, not going into that in this video, When you are wielding the weapon in combat, you increase your bonus damage from raging from +2 to +6. But you also become clumsy 1 because of the size, and this clumsy condition cannot be removed or ignored in any way. What this means is that while wielding this weapon, you get -1 to anything dexterity related. And this stacks with the -1 AC that Rage already has built in. Since Armor class is a dexterity DC, your AC effectively goes down by 2 as a Giant Instinct Barbarian. On the upside, when you take Weapon Specialization class feature, your damage goes up from +6 to +10, and when you get Greater Weapon Specialization, it goes from +10 to +18 damage. Flat. You could roll a 1 on all your damage dice and still deal about 20 or more damage. When you gain the Raging Resistance class feature, you resist bludgeoning damage and your choice of cold, electric, or fire damage when you take the feature. You cannot choose this each time you rage, you pick one right when you take the feature. And the final instinct of the core rulebook is the Spirit Instinct, which is a barbarian who draws their power from their ancestors or ghosts around them. You are not allowed to disrespect corpse or spirits, but you are allowed to defend yourself against them. So if you're being attacked by ghosts, you can fight back. But if you find a random body, you can't just cut its head off for no reason. When raging, your damage increases from +2 to +3, and you can choose to deal negative or positive damage with this instead of your normal damage type. So this makes you really, really strong at taking out things like undead, because your raging damage, if you change it to positive, deals bonus damage due to their inherent weakness to positive damage. In addition to this, if you choose to deal negative or positive damage, your weapon, or unarmed attack, gains the effects of the Ghost Touch property runes, which means it works against things like ghosts and spirits, any incorporeal being. Your rage action also gains the divine and necromancy traits, plus negative or positive as appropriate. I should amend that you have to choose whether your rage damage is going to be positive or negative when you begin raging, not when you deal damage. When you gain weapon specialization, your rage damage increases from +3 to +7, and greater weapon specialization increases it from +7 to +13. And finally, you resist negative damage with raging resistance, as well as damage dealt by the attacks and abilities of any undead creature. The Superstition Instinct is all about a barbarian's intrinsic distrust of magic. This is very Conan. This is very classic barbarian, no magic man, hit thing with big stick. In my opinion, I'm not a fan of this anathema, as it makes it pretty hard to work cohesively with your team, but effectively you are not allowed to willingly accept the effects of any magic spells, whether this be spells like guidance, or even healing spells like heal or soothe. You can still drink potions and invest in magical items, but you can't cast spells from any magic item, and my big gripe is at the end here. If an ally insists on using magic on you, despite your unwillingness, and you have no reason to believe they will stop, continuing to travel with that ally of your own free will counts as willingly accepting their spells, and thus is also anathema. Basically, if you're traveling with a healer who keeps healing you, and you don't leave the party, you lose your powers. There's a lot of ways to homebrew around this. You can say healing is fine, or you can say it's only specifically arcane magic or something like that, but the way it's written makes it really difficult for a superstition barbarian instinct to work with something like a cleric. Now, because of this difficulty to roleplay, you get some really powerful rewards. First off, while raging, you get +2 to your saving throws against all magical effects. On top of that, you deal 4 bonus raging damage instead of the normal 2 against any creature that can cast spells. And once every 10 minutes, when you rage, you regain hit points equal to the temporary hit points you gain from raging. So at level 1, on top, let's say you have a +3 to Constitution, on top of gaining 4 temporary hit points, you also restore 4 hit points to yourself. And you can do this every 10 minutes, so theoretically, you can infinitely heal yourself. If you take every 10 minutes, you can get really mad and heal yourself, and then calm down, and then 10 minutes later get really mad again. And it would take a long time because you don't heal that much, but you can heal yourself. And that's supposed to offset the fact that they cannot be healed by magic. At 7th level, when they gain weapon specialization, the bonus damage against spellcasting creatures increases from +4 to +8, and greater weapon specialization increases the damage from +8 to +12 against spellcasting creatures, and you also get a flat +8 against all other creatures. At level 9, when you gain Raging Resistance, you have to choose 2 magical traditions. Now, you can't mix and match here. It has to either be Arcane and Occult, Arcane and Primal, Divine and Occult, or Divine and Primal. I don't know why it's this way, but you can't select, Primal and Occult. I don't really know why. But the resistance from your Raging Resistance class feature applies against all damage you take from spells cast from these 2 traditions, regardless of the type of damage. Now that I've spent 20 minutes talking about Barbarian Instincts, how about we talk about the class? At 2nd level, you get skill feats. At 3rd level, you gain Deny Advantage, which I think is the first time we've seen this in a deep dive. You can't be flat-footed to anything your level or lower. There are still some ways to get around this, but you aren't flat-footed if they are hidden, undetected, or even flanking you. Some things can still count. If you're knocked prone, you're still flat-footed to them. But because you deny their advantage, it's really hard to get you flat-footed against creatures that are lower level than you. General feats, skill increases, ability boosts, ancestry feats, and at level 5, we get Brutality. You increase your weapon proficiency to Expert with all weapons except for advanced weapons, and while raging, you gain access to the crit specialization effects for all of your melee weapons and unarmed strikes. That's pretty good. That's a really early crit specialization for a martial class. Level 7 is great for barbarians. They get Juggernaut, increasing fortitude saving throws to Master and auto-crit succeeding any success. And they get Weapon Specialization, which almost all classes get this at some point. It increases damage by 2 if you're using a weapon you're expert in, 3 if you're Master, and 4 if you're Legendary. And remember that every instinct grants bonus damage when you get Weapon Specialization. Level 9, Reflex saves increase to Expert. And also at level 9, you gain Raging Resistance, which gives you resistance equal to 3 plus your Constitution modifier against the damage explained in the instincts. So at level 9, you're probably resisting about 6 damage from the sources your instinct defines. That's really good. Especially for Fury. Negating 6 damage from all physical weapon attacks? Really good. Level 11 will make a lot more sense when we start talking about the Barbarian Feats, as a lot of their feats are unique actions they can use while raging. With Mighty Rage, as a free action, when you take an action to rage, you can take a free single action as long as that action has the rage trait. You can also count your rage as costing 2 actions, and then take any 2-action activity also with the rage trait. Level 13, your fortitude saves go up to Legendary, and you can no longer critically fail. You either get a normal failure, or you critically succeed. Those are the only 2 outcomes now. Also, if you fail a fortitude save against a damaging effect, you still half the damage. Gross. You also become an expert with light and medium armor, as well as unarmored defense. And then at 13th level, you get Master Proficiency with weapons. I don't know why I said 13th level, because this is all 13th level. 15th level, you get Greater Weapon Specialization, which increases all your damage, as well as buffing up your damage even more based on your instinct. You also get Indomitable Will, increasing will saves to Master, and auto-critically succeeding successes. Level 17, Perception increases to Master, and then also at level 17, you can rage again very quickly. Normally you have to wait a full minute between your rage ending and restarting your rage, but now you can do it after 1 turn. If your rage ends after your next turn, you can immediately rage again. Level 19, Master in Light, Medium, and Unarmored. And then also, one of my favorite high-level class features, Devastator. Your class DC increases to Master, and all of your melee strikes ignore 10 points of resistance to physical damage. That's really strong. I mean, it's level 19, so 10 damage doesn't mean as much as it could, but it's still great. And now, after recording for 30 minutes, we can move on to the feats. Starting off, Acute Vision. You can get Dark Vision. Cool. Moment of Clarity. For 1 action, you can use Concentrate actions for the rest of that turn. I'll be honest, this is one of my least favorites. I don't know when this would be worth it, because it's not like with this feat you can just do that. Of your 3 actions, you have to spend 1 to sort of calm yourself down, and then you can take Concentrate actions. So it's not great for action economy, but who knows, maybe there's a super good use for it somewhere. Raging Intimidation. While you are raging, demoralize and scare to death gain the Rage trait, which means you can use them while raging. On top of this, you also gain the Intimidating Glare and Scare to Death skill feats as soon as you meet the prerequisites. You don't even need to spend a skill feat on it. Fantastic. Raging Thrower, also known as the best level 1 feat, allows you to apply your rage damage to thrown weapons. I have yet to make one that's super good and viable, but I know it's out there. The throwing weapon Barbarian so far is worse than all other barbarians, but they're so cool! Also, certain things like Brutal Critical and the Devastator class feature also apply to your thrown weapons. Sudden Charge, it's your classic martial, move twice and attack for 2 actions. Adrenaline Rush. While raging, you can carry more bulk, and you also get a +1 bonus to athletics checks to lift heavy objects, escape, and force open. I really like that one, because if you're running away from something, your rage will typically be pretty useless, but now you can be the guy who's like, I got this, and hold the door open as everyone runs underneath it, and then you push yourself under. I like that a lot. Draconic Arrogance, only for Dragon Instinct Barbarians, gives you a +2 status bonus against emotion effect saving throws while raging. I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of Barbarian at level 1. Aside from Sudden Charge and Raging Thrower, they all kinda bore me. Though it is cool that any Barbarian can have Dark Vision. Acute Scent. You gain an imprecise 30-foot sense of smell. But only while raging. Why does it have to only be while raging? Come on, can't that just be at all times? Furious Finish is really cool. You make a strike, and if it hits, you gain a circumstance bonus to damage equal to the number of rounds remaining in your rage. What this means is that on one turn, you can rage and attack for +10 damage. Regardless of if you hit or miss, your rage immediately ends and fatigues you until you rest for 10 minutes. Fatigue is a really bad condition, so yeah, really risky but really powerful to finish off a fight. No escape. As a reaction, if a foe moves away from you, you can stride up to your speed to keep up with them. This is really handy, it makes it hard for them to get away, and even though you don't have attack of opportunity like a fighter, you can still get pretty sticky with this one. Second Wind. You can rage immediately after your current rage ends, rather than waiting the full minute. But at the end of this one, you are fatigued until you rest for 10 minutes, same as Furious Finish. Shake It Off. While raging, for 1 action, you can reduce your frightened condition by 1 and attempt a free fortitude save to recover from the sickened condition. Even if you fail this check, your sickened condition still goes down by 1. It doesn't change if you get a critical failure, but it goes down by 2 on a success and 3 on a critical success. That's really powerful because, like fatigued, sickened is a nasty condition. Bashing Charge is like Sudden Charge, but for breaking things. You stride twice and make an athletics force open check on an obstacle with a +1 circumstance bonus to the roll. If your movement passes through or ends adjacent to a door, window, fence, wall, or similar obstacle, you can force it open, and if you succeed, you get to finish your movement. Fast Movement. While raging, you get a +10-foot bonus to your speed. It's really good. You combine that with no escape, and you will be sticky. It'll be hard to get away from that barbarian. Raging Athlete. You must be an expert in athletics at this point, but while raging, you gain a climb speed and swim speed equal to your movement speed. Also, the DC of high and long jumps decrease by 10, and your leap distance increases by 5 feet when jumping horizontally and 2 feet when jumping vertically. You're just really, really good at the Olympics. Swipe. You make 1 attack against 2 adjacent targets. You only roll once and apply the damage to both creatures if you hit both of them, or 1 or none, depending on the outcome of the roll. It counts as 2 attacks for your multiple attack penalty, but obviously it's only 1 attack. If your weapon has the sweep trait, it applies to all of your swipe attacks. Wounded Rage is kind of a cool reaction. If you take damage, you can enter Rage as a reaction, basically saving you an action on the following turn. It has its moments. It's not the most powerful feat, but it's definitely good. Howdy! It's the next day now, because it was so hot and muggy in my recording room last night that I got lightheaded at the end of that recording session, so I took the rest of the night off, and I'm finishing the video today. So let's jump in with Barreling Charge. For 2 actions, you can effectively use athletics to move through creature spaces, instead of the usual acrobatics to tumble through. For 2 actions, you move through enemy spaces and make a melee strike. You roll an athletics check against every creature you pass through's Fortitude DC, and if you succeed, you move through them normally. If you fail any of these athletics checks, you do just end your movement immediately, but as long as you get up to the target you were originally running towards, you do get to make a melee strike. So as I said before, it's basically tumble through, but using athletics. Oversized Throw is incredible. For 2 actions, you grab any large piece of your surrounding, a boulder, a table, a freaking wagon, and throw it at your foe. The object must be your size or 1 size smaller than you and must not have too much bulk for you to lift it in the first place. Make a ranged strike with the object, and regardless of the result, the object takes damage, but it effectively becomes a simple ranged weapon that deals 1d10 bludgeoning damage and has a range increment of 20 feet. It also has the thrown trait, so you still get to add your strength to the damage. When you get weapon specialization, this increases to 2d10, and greater weapon specialization increases to 3d10. This is not unlike some of the abilities that the improvised weapon archetype gets in this same book. I really like this one. An improvised weapon barbarian sounds like so much fun. Spiritual Guides is just solid. It's not unlike Halfling Luck. It's only for Spirit Instinct barbarians, but once per day, as long as you normal fail a perception or skill check, not a critical fail, you can re-roll it and use the second result, even if it's worse. Simple as that. Supernatural Senses actually makes that super smell rage feat from first level really worth taking. If you have the acute scent level 1 barbarian feat, you can take supernatural senses, or if you have any imprecise scent at all. Your scent is preternaturally sharp. Effectively, if a target is concealed or hidden while you're raging, it reduces the DC to hit them. Normally, if something is concealed, you need to pass a DC 5 check to hit them. Well, now you only need to pass a DC 3, and instead of a DC 11 for hidden, it's DC 9. Animal Skin at level 6 is basically a must-have for any Animal Instinct barbarian. It increases their unarmored defense to expert proficiency, and instead of taking a penalty to armor class while raging, they now gain +1 instead. So along with +2 armor class from the proficiency increase and replacing that -1 with a +1 to armor class, that's a net gain of +4 armor class from level 5 to level 6 if they take this feat. Additionally, when you get the Greater Juggernaut class feature, you get another +1 AC on top of that. However, the thickness of your hide does limit your dex modifier to a +3 maximum. Attack of Opportunity is Attack of Opportunity, you know? It's always good. Brutal Bully, requiring expert in athletics, is super fun and can sort of lend itself to a more grapple-y style barbarian. If you ever successfully disarm, grapple, shove, or trip a foe while raging, you deal bludgeoning damage equal to your strength modifier. If you trip someone and get a critical success, you add that damage on top of the normal 1d6 damage they take from the trip. Cleave is okay. When you compare it to Swipe, Cleave is a reaction, while Swipe is 2 actions. If we recall, Swipe is 2 actions to make 1 attack against 2 targets. And since the attack is made against both targets, it doesn't take a multiple attack penalty. Cleave, on the other hand, uses your reaction to make a second strike against a second foe. So if 2 enemies are right in front of you and you kill one of them, you can use your reaction to make another attack. So the benefit of this is 2 attacks for 1 action, but it's also 1 action and your reaction, whereas Swipe at 4th level was just 2 actions. You can decide for yourself, but I personally think level 4's Swipe is just better than Cleave. Dragon's Rage Breath is what everybody takes the Draconic Instinct for. You get Dragon Breath. Depending on your dragon type, you either get a 30-foot cone or a 60-foot line, dealing 1d6 damage per level of the damage type you picked with your dragon. Every creature in the area gets a basic reflex save, like normal. Now you can use this every time you rage, so you can effectively use this once every minute or 2. The problem is that if you use it more than once within an hour, it only deals half damage each subsequent time you do it. So if you're level 6, then you can use it and deal 6d6 damage, which is huge. But if you end your rage, start raging again, and use it again, it'll only deal 3d6 damage, and it'll also only cover half the area it usually does. Giant Stature for the Giant Instinct Barbarian may not be the best feat in the game, but it is one of my personal favorites. Effectively, it just gives you 5 feet of reach. It does make you grow to large size, which is the coolest part, but the Clumsy 1 condition it grants doesn't stack with the Clumsy 1 you already have if you're wielding your giant weapon. Since they're both Clumsy 1, that doesn't make Clumsy 2. They're just 2 different effects of Clumsy 1. I'm sad this doesn't boost your damage in any way. This is just 5 feet of reach. That's all this is. It's not amazing, but it is really cool. Flavor-wise, this is fantastic, and you could do a lot role-playing with this. Spirit's Interference, on the other hand, is really cool for the Spirit Instinct Barbarian. You call forth protective spirits to ward off ranged attacks. Until your rage ends, all ranged attack against you have to make a DC 5 flat check, otherwise they miss. Effectively, you are concealed from all ranged attacks, just giving a 25% chance for them to fail on you for the rest of your rage. Really good. Inner Strength. For 1 action, you can reduce the enfeebled condition on yourself by 1 while raging. That's just solid. With Strength being your key ability for almost everything you do, being able to just get rid of that condition is fabulous. Because enfeeblement usually doesn't go down on its own, it usually has a duration. But if so, even something like Ray of Enfeeblement critically hits you and gives you Enfeebled 2, might even give Enfeebled 3, you can still get rid of it every turn. Heck, if you wanted to, there's nothing stopping you from using Inner Strength 3 times in 1 round to get rid of all 3 stacks of Enfeeblement. That's amazing. Mage Hunter, specifically for the Superstition Instinct, is basically attack of opportunity only if they cast a spell. The reason this kinda sucks is that the normal attack of opportunity works on manipulate actions. If we see here, a creature within your reach uses a manipulate action or a move action. Pretty much all spells count as manipulate actions. The only time this is better than attack of opportunity is if the target is casting a spell without a somatic component. If it is strictly a verbal spell, yes, you can Mage Hunter attack them, but attack of opportunity cannot, because spells without somatic components are not manipulate actions. But most spells do have somatic components. Even Attack of Opportunity has effectively just a better critical hit option. With Mage Hunter, if you critically hit the spellcaster, you disrupt the spell completely. Same thing with Attack of Opportunity. If you critically hit the target with Attack of Opportunity, it disrupts a manipulate action if that was the trigger. So this is kind of lame. I wish it gave you a bonus to hit the spellcaster. I think that would have made this stand out more. Maybe a +1 or a +2 to hit the spellcaster because of, I hate magic. Nocturnal Sense is kinda lame for a 6th level feat. You gain Dark Vision if you don't already have it while raging, and your Super Sniffer increases to 60 feet. Scouring Rage can only be taken if you have an instinct that changes your rage damage type, which I believe is just Draconic and Spirit Instinct. When you rage, as a free action, you can emit a powerful burst of your energy type that your rage damage changes to, and deal damage equal to your level to each adjacent creature with a basic fortitude save. So effectively, if you're a Red Dragon Draconic Instinct Barbarian, then for a free action when you rage, you can deal 6 fire damage to each adjacent creature around you with a basic fortitude save. Animal Rage is really interesting and might be one of the feats with the most traits I've ever seen. Barbarian Concentrate Instinct, Polymorph, Primal Rage, and Transmutation. Effectively, while raging for 1 action, you can shapeshift into your animal, but you keep your own stats, hit points, and unarmed strikes instead of those granted by the animal. You also retain the effects of your gear, so really, this doesn't do a whole lot other than just shapeshift you. It doesn't change your damage, your armor class, your skill checks, anything like that. This is very flavorful. It is good if you are a frog Animal Instinct, as it gives you 15 feet of reach with a melee strike, which is really good. But other than that, I can't think of a whole lot of places this is super useful. Furious Bully, again, playing into that grapple-heavy barbarian, you gain a +2 bonus to athletics checks for attack actions while raging. So again, it's really pushing you to disarm, to shove, to trip, and really control the battlefield and rewards you for doing it. Renewed Vigor, for 1 action while raging, you gain temporary hit points equal to half your level plus your constitution modifier. That's kinda gross. That means every single turn, you can gain about 8 or so temporary hit points. It also doesn't have a duration, so I'm guessing they just last until combat wears off or they're lost. Pretty cool. Share Rage. For one action while raging, you can allow an ally within 30 feet to rage with you. Now, I don't believe they gain the abilities of your instinctual rage, as your instinct alters the rage while you're affected by it. But they do still get the +2 additional damage to melee attacks and the -1 to armor class. So be careful who you give it to, but it's a really cool, flavorful thing if you really want to get your ally to really buff up their damage. Sudden Leap sort of alters your long jump and high jump skills. Effectively, you can double the maximum distance you can jump with them, and at any point during the jump, you can make a melee strike. When you make that strike, you immediately stop your forward momentum and fall straight down, and as long as you didn't fall any farther than the max height of that jump, you don't take any damage and you land on your feet. Thrash at level 8 once again pushes that bully grapple barbarian, and if you have a foe already grabbed, then for one action, they make a basic fortitude save against your class DC, and if they fail, they take damage equal to strength modifier, plus your weapon specialization damage, plus your rage damage. In the core rulebook, it does say your ferocious specialization damage. It is a typo from the playtest and should have been replaced with weapon specialization. So for example, if you're a fury barbarian with a +4 to strength, then when you thrash for one action, you would be dealing 4 from strength, +6 from rage, +2 from weapon specialization for 12 guaranteed damage if they fail their save, or potentially 24 damage if they critically fail their save. And remember, this does not have the attack trait. If you already have someone grabbed, you can thrash them 3 times in one turn at no penalty. That's a really cool build. Alright, I gotta jump in here. I gotta call this video here, y'all. This ended up going so much longer than I expected, so there will be a Barbarians Part 2, because Barbarians have a lot of really detailed feats, and believe it or not, there's another 40 minutes or so of this video left. So we're gonna call it here, and you'll be getting Part 2 later this week, hopefully this weekend, if things work out correctly. I just want to thank you so very much for watching. Shout out to my patrons, wherever they are on the screen. Sorry if I feel all over the place. I have had a hell of a week, and I'm hoping to get back into more controlled content next week. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and until next time, no nat ones.